Coach Dane here from Rise Above, and I'm here to teach you how to do a trap bar deadlift or a hex bar deadlift. The reason why it's called a hex or trap bar is when there's 6 sides, hence hex bar, or trap bar, you're actually inside of it, meaning you're trapped as you're doing your exercise. Either way, whatever you want to call it, that's perfectly fine, but let's go ahead, let's go over how to do one. So basically with the trap bar, the tricky part is finding a good grip. The reason being is there's no indicators on the trap bar where the center actually is. That's what makes it challenging. Meaning if your hands are too far forward, it's going to be hard to hold, or if your hands are too far back, also going to be hard to hold. But basically this is no different than any other deadlift other than, say, you're holding your handles to the side here. So if you take a look, you can see I'm dropping down into my hip hinge, and basically I'm grabbing onto the handles on the side. Very similar setup to a barbell deadlift where you're going to kind of start with a rounded back, and then you'll actually drop down, drop the hips to get that flat back through your movement. So let me go ahead, let me reset here. So basically kind of taking a shot in the dark on where that sweet spot is. Let's say I'm going to go ahead and drop the hips to basically flatten that back out, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull it straight up like a deadlift, and then bringing it back down to the floor to go ahead for my next deadlift. Now, let's talk about the hand placement, because this is the most important part, or the hardest part I should say, is that a couple things will happen if your hands aren't in the correct position. And you'll know pretty much right away if your hands are in a good position. Meaning that if you go to pick up the bar and your hands are too far forward and you go to pick it up, the bar is going to either go forward on you, or it's going to go back on you. So like when I tried to pick that up, the bar came up and towards me. That basically means my hands were too far forward, and where the majority of the weight is now being pushed behind you. So again, one more time, if I plan that out, my hands are, now I'm over exaggerating on how far my hands are forward, but as I pretend to pull up, you can see if I were trying to pick that up, how much harder that would be. Now if your hands are, if the bar's coming up like this, you just need to slide your hands back to try to just flatten it out. And that's the thing, is you'll know pretty much right away once you go to pick it up, and if your hands are too far forward and back. Now if your hands are too far back, again, I'll show you an over-exaggeration. If the hands are too far back, you can see the front of the bar crashes down into the floor. And then all the weight would be on like the back of your hand. So play around with that hand grip. If you're lucky enough to find a bar that does have it, tells you where the center is, highly recommend using that trap bar or hex bar. But that's how you do your trap bar deadlift.